Manchester United have a huge Sir Alex Ferguson problem. In the first press conference as interim manager of the Red Devils, Darren Fletcher spoke about how he phoned the legendary club figure to make sure it was okay for him to assume the role. Now, it was not the perfect start in this role for Fletcher as United drew away to Burnley. Now, while Ferguson was totally deserving of a send off from the club in 2013 after everything he had done and won with Man United, his shadow has loomed large on the club ever since and will no doubt have an impact on the managers that have succeeded him. Starting off with David Moyes, the man handpicked by Ferguson to be his successor. There were problems right from the off. This coming from senior players is not like the mentality of David Moyes, and it was never going to work if that was the case. Now, you've got the feel from Moyes having to deal with leading players undermining him. These senior players who have been there and done that with Ferguson. He did not live up to the hopes, obviously, as manager, but you have to feel from him a bit. Following the Scot, in came Ryan Giggs, entering into his first foray of management as interim, and the phrase "give it Giggsy" was born. Now, the former Wales international saw out the season at the end of David Moyes' era, winning two of the four games he was in charge for. Then came the first major swing, a move away from Ferguson, as the club appointed Louis van Gaal. The former Barcelona manager came in the summer of 2014 following an impressive campaign in the World Cup with the Netherlands. Now, Van Gaal would see relative success at the club winning an FA Cup, but his football was incredibly boring, and United fans dreamed of more. Enter Jose Mourinho, a former colleague of Van Gaal, potential employee, disciple, make of it what you will, with the pair working at Barcelona together. The Portuguese manager would make fans believe again, and he would arguably come the closest since Ferguson to win the Premier League, finishing second. And he has claimed that this is his greatest achievement due to the quality of the squad he was working with. Mourinho did lift the Europa League, League Cup, and Community Shield before being sacked to be replaced by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer on an interim basis. This is until one night in Paris when, against all the odds, the English side eliminated PSG from the Champions League. The greatest night in their history. At least that's what I'm supposed to believe from Rio Ferdinand's reaction. And the Norwegian was given the job on a full time basis. Now, the good times did not last, and after a farewell message to the fans, a bit embarrassing in my opinion, considering he was sacked and not retiring from the game. Solskjaer would be gone in November 2021. Up step another former Ferguson disciple. This would be the third. This time, Michael Carrick. Again, it would be the first move into management for one of his disciples, and he would then go on to manage Middlesbrough. At United, he was unbeaten in his three games in charge. Now, if rumours are to be believed, he may come back this season to see out the campaign. Following Carrick, in comes Ralph Rangnick, a man that could never get the side ticking in the way he wanted with the pressing game, and he would be gone after 6 months to be replaced by Eric Ten Hag. Now, this appointment was fun, not for United fans, but for everyone else. The second coming of Christ had arrived. The first time United had appointed a manager with potential rather than being a has-been or experience since Ferguson's departure. The Dutchman would have success with some silverware as he won an FA Cup and League Cup, but again, there was no sign that United would become a great power in England again. United spent millions on players, and every single one since the Ferguson departure, and every single one has got worse, except for two, arguably, being Bruno Fernandes and Diego Dallo. As the club search for the days where it could be top of the table, battling out the titles and major silverware, they believed Ten Hag was not the man after 2 years in charge. Enter former United man number four, Ruud van Nistelrooy. He would impress in his 4 games in charge, winning three of them. However, unlike his fellow United man and striker, this would not be enough to get him the job like Ole. No, he would have to settle for Leicester City, who he'd suffer relegation with last season. Now, they would opt for Ruben Amorim. And whoa, when you thought United couldn't fall any further, you'd be wrong. The club finished 15th in the Premier League, would lose the Europa League final to a club nobody loses a final to, that being Tottenham Hotspur. But the Portuguese manager was attempting to change the whole system at Man United without the players, sticking to it religiously, as opponent after opponent easily beat them. Now, Amarim is gone, and we arrive with Fletcher. So far, the story has not had a lot of Ferguson in it, but here is why he is the problem. The Scot never truly left United. That is until October 2024. He was an ambassador of the club. Now, you may think there's nothing wrong with that until you realise he still had an office at the club and he entertained people there. Again, why is this an issue, you might ask? It may not be, but mentally, it's like he never left. His shadow was ever present at the club. The staff that were there under him were there under all these managers to come after. The man was watching on at matches, watching the successors fail. When a legendary figure leaves a club, it's important to separate and move on. A new identity has to be found. Previously at United, under Matt Busby, this same problem happened. It would not move on until Ferguson came in. Do they have to wait another 15 or 20 years for this to happen before they can win another league title? Fans will hope not. But until the likes of Fletcher move on past, ring in Ferguson to see if it's okay to take on the role, the club will not move forward. The former players of United have not been helpful, of Ferguson particularly, with constant negativity around the club and how it's being run on and off the pitch. While it's not fantastic, I'll be honest, it becomes the central talking point in the world of football, and this scrutiny does not help any manager or players to perform. How do United move on? I don't know, being honest. If I did, I may be employed by the club. And look, if they're willing to hire me, I will give them the answers. But what do you think? How do United move past Ferguson and reignite the club again, challenging for league titles and Champions Leagues? I've been Brendan McGilligan. Thank you very much for listening. Talk to you soon. I hope to hear from you in the comments and hope to hear from you. Give me your opinions on what you think of the club. But until next time.